So I just rewatched Trainspotting. Wait a minute. This isn't YouTube Shorts. But I did actually rewatch Trainspotting. And yeah, it's that good. You know this. One thing that really stood out to me this time was how great the soundtrack is. Truly Britpop's finest. And it adds such a vitality and texture to 90s Scotland or Britain or wherever the hell these guys are. And that got me thinking about needle drops. You know, when a movie, rather than playing a traditional film score, sets the scene to a pre-existing song by a pre-existing artist. There is a long and storied art of needle drops. Everyone wants to make the next Layla, or the next Stuck in the Middle of You, or the next Where Is My Mind. Some want it too much. But one subgenre of the needle drop I don't see as often are needle drops from musicals. As in, take a musical number from a musical and use it like any other needle drop. You don't see these as often, probably due to the fact that nobody seems to like musicals. But also, I think they're a lot harder to implement. The thing is, with musical numbers, they have their own context to them. The lyrics are specifically meant to service its own story, so taking that specificity and moving it to a different story, it can be jarring. And even if you're moving the song to a context that suits the lyrics, you run the risk of being on the nose. Like, hypothetically, if a movie about a revolution needle drops Les Mis' Do You Hear the People Sing, that's a very obvious needle drop, that's a very unsubtle needle drop, and it's a very uncreative needle drop. Thus, I think there are two main ways to needle drop from a musical. The first is by buying into the obvious meaning the song holds and running with it, as is the case with Punch Drunk Love, and its use of Popeye's He Needs Me. In Popeye, the song is Olive Oyl singing how much she loves Popeye. I think. I haven't seen Popeye. In Punch Drunk Love, it's used over and over again to show how much Barry loves Lena. It shouldn't work on paper, but consider that Punch Drunk Love is a surrealist, Lynchian rom-com. The whimsy and distillation of love in its simplest form makes it so that even the most unsubtlest of needle drops don't feel out of place. On the other side, you have musical needle drops that are harsh juxtapositions to the context of the film. Take A Clockwork Orange, with its iconic use of Singing in the Rain from, you guessed it, Singing in the Rain. One of the most beautiful and classical Hollywood showbiz tunes is now set to a scene where teenage incels brutally abuse this random couple. It's enough to play any happy-sounding song, but by using one where the song is a character singing about how good his life is, juxtaposed with possibly the lowest life can get, it works wonders. So after all this preamble, now it's actually time to talk about the thing you clicked on this video for. Why does Wally listen to Hello Dolly? It seems like a useless question, as you can tell in the movie why he listens to it. He finds it charming, but aspirational, a pure expression of the love he seems to lack. Thus, it would make sense that this is another Punch Drunk Love scenario, and thus wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. And yeah, it does work in that category. It also works with the juxtaposition case I mentioned. Big, bombastic, sentimental old Hollywood tune set to a post-apocalyptic world, that is literally what juxtaposition is. But there's a third layer to Wally's use of Hello Dolly, and this requires a more meta-analysis of the musical Wally pulls from, Hello Dolly. If you know your film history, you'll know that Hello Dolly was made during a transitional period in American cinema, the moment where lavish old Hollywood films died out, and a more experimental, more gritty cinematic movement took place. I think you can take any movie from either era and compare them to each other, and you can clearly see the difference in tone and production. And no genre of film exemplifies this change more than the old Hollywood musical. These were powerhouses and staples of old Hollywood filmmaking. A surefire crowd pleaser that only grew bigger and bigger the more they succeeded. In a way not unlike the rise of the MCU in the 2010s. But much like the MCU, a fall was just on the horizon. These cornerstones of the film industry suddenly became much riskier bets, and as such, had to go bigger and better in order to court more audiences away from the television screens and into the cinema. It was like a bubble. It kept growing, more and more lavish, more costumes, more stars, more epic shit, until finally, the bubble popped. The genre itself collapsed, the movies tanked commercially and critically, and the old Hollywood musical died. That's not to say musicals themselves died off. There were still very much success stories, but these movies tended to align themselves more with the films of the 70s New Hollywood style. Look at the work of, say, Bob Fosse, and you'll see that these are a far cry from the glitz and glamour of old Hollywood. All this to say, there was an implosion with the movie musical, and by sheer coincidence, Hello Dolly was right in the middle of this pandemonium. Some even claim that Hello Dolly, by its sheer exuberance and failure to recoup the costs, killed the movie musical. I don't think this is true. I see Hello Dolly's failure as indicative of, rather than the source of, the degradation of musicals, and old Hollywood as a whole. a story of opulence, and the idea that throwing money at something in the hopes that it'll stay afloat is not the way to go in the film industry. Thus, it makes perfect sense why Wall-E chooses to needle drop Hello Dolly. A story of the overconsumption and wastefulness of humanity is truly the perfect movie to needle drop a musical that symbolically represents all that jazz. By and large's rampant pursuit of cold hard cash leads to the destruction of the entire world, and they can do nothing but leave it there as they fly off to new heights. Much like how the old Hollywood musical was essentially left to dust, save for a few blips of the past. It's this brilliant meta usage of Hello Dolly's music that Wall-E subtly works his environmental messaging in. But beyond that, I also think there's a reverence to this old school way of making musicals that's kinda overlooked. It's easy to rag on Hello Dolly as the musical killer, but Wall-E doesn't. I mean, he doesn't even know about film history. In fact, he does the direct opposite of what I'm doing. He is in utter reverence of this movie. There's a recognition that this, and by proxy, all of the other wonderful parts of humanity displayed throughout the movie, are worth celebrating, even if the people who make and represent said things want nothing but money. In the meta-analysis of Hello Dolly's usage, Wall-E seems to suggest about Hello Dolly's genre that, while it may be an antiquated way of looking at and making films, it is nonetheless an essential and truthful part of film history, and that they do hold meaning despite being dead in the water. Wall-E is no stranger to cinematic tributes, after all. If you think about it, Wall-E is one of the few movies that embrace silent storytelling, both as a device for romance and for comedy. It's essentially City Lights, but in space. Both of these cinematic influences for Wall-E speak to ideas of romanticism, preservation, and learning when it comes to the history of cinema, and the whole of humanity. And all that from a needle drop from a D-tier movie musical. And that's the magic of needle drops. When you find a song in the right context and execute it well, it opens up a whole new world of storytelling.